Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Good, bad, and crazy martinis for you today. And if you're upset about the fact that it's Monday, next Monday's Christmas. So look forward to that as we dig into our topics and get closer to the start of our year-end specials, which will kick off on Thursday. Much more about that as the week goes on, but our regular listeners will know that our final 6 episodes of each year are our year-end awards, from underrated and overrated to rising star to best and worst idea to political theater, over and underreported stories, and eventually person of the year and major awards like that. So that all starts on Thursday. Today, though, Jim, we start with our good martini. And the Washington Post reporting that the Biden administration, the Biden campaign really, as well as other Democrats planning to run next year, if they're not hitting the panic button, their fingers tapping on the panel pretty darn close. It reads, the night before President Biden departed Washington to celebrate Thanksgiving, he gathered his closest aides for a meeting in the White House residence. After pardoning a couple of turkeys, Biden delivered some stern words for the small group assembled. His poll numbers were unacceptably low, and he wanted to know what his team and his campaign were doing about it, complaining that his economic message had done little to move the ball, even as the economy was growing and unemployment was falling. Since that November meeting, there are more polls showing Biden trailing Trump nationally, and the accumulation of troubling polls for Biden has made it harder for Democrats to dismiss them, leading to a fresh set of conversations among Biden officials and allies about whether the president and his team need a shift in strategy. Meanwhile, other Democrats on the ballot are wondering if having Biden at all is going to be a major drag on their efforts, and they specifically mention Alyssa Slotkin running for the open seat in Michigan and wondering if she's going to be able to win if Biden's at the top of the ticket. Of course, the campaign responded by saying she looks forward to running with President Biden. Sure you do. So, Jim, not much has changed, and we've talked about this over and over again. Your economic messaging can be whatever you want it to be, but when you've got compounding inflation, and the only reason the growth in inflation is lighter than it was a year or two ago is because interest rates have cranked up, and now it's more expensive to buy a car and a home, so you're getting squeezed on multiple fronts, and people just don't have confidence in Biden on the border and on the world, China. I mean, all sorts of things. And the fact that he's mystified here is just exhausting. Yeah,
I think that's the aspect that should stress out Democrats the most. There is a certain amount of comedy to this scene in which, Biden delivered some stern words. His poll numbers are unacceptably low, and he wanted to know what his team and his campaign were doing about it. What are you doing about it, Mr. President? Right. There's only so much these people can do. They are the best at what they do. They've run tons in advertising. I don't think you could say the media has been excessively hard on him. Unacceptably low. Where does Biden think he should be? And it just, if you're a Democrat and you're reading this, first of all, the first thing is the degree to which Biden believes that this is something he has nothing to do with, or that he's doing a terrific job, and that those unfair, unreasonable, irrational American people aren't giving him any credit for it. And they're just wedded to that narrative. They're just wedded to that mindset that they're doing a fantastic job, and the American people are just being unreasonable. And then secondly, he just thinks it's up to everybody else to fix it, and that there's some magic word, there's some slogan that is just going to turn this thing around. I heard this advice from an old GOP consultant years and years ago. If you really want to change the perception of something, you have to change the reality of something. There's only so much perception you can do. I won't give the old joke about the dog owner and the dog food that ends with him, why did you buy that brand? Because the dog doesn't like it. The American people don't like the results. They don't like what they're getting. You mentioned high mortgage rates. You mentioned high auto loan rates. Look, when everything is really hard to, cost of living skyrockets, people don't care as much about the unemployment rate. And Biden just keeps going around the country talking about how great the unemployment rate. Yeah, but if your wages aren't keeping up with your costs, you don't feel great. And that, comment from Alyssa Slotkin, allegedly, that she's saying on the record, we're all smiles about President Biden. But look, if Biden goes down in 2024. He's probably the odds of him losing Michigan are pretty good. And if Biden loses Michigan, the odds of a Democrat losing the Senate race are pretty good too. So Slotkin is just being rational here, just kind of recognizing that Michigan is a bluish purple state. Generally, you see Democrats winning statewide, but they've lost some gubernatorial races, and Trump won it in 2016. It's rational to be worried about your odds if you're the top of the ticket is going to be a drag. No, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's not fine. And all year long, we've heard people saying, at some point, Obama's going to go to Biden and tell him he needs to step down, or there's going to be some last-minute substitution of some other candidate, Gavin Newsom. I'm skeptical, but you see stories like this, and it does feel like the dominoes are kind of tumbling in a certain way. They're kind of, the billiard balls are breaking in a particular manner that makes that not quite so unthinkable as it might have been not too long ago.
All right, well, let's talk about our first great sponsor for the day, and that is Omaha Steaks. Look, we are getting really close to Christmas, and there are lots of people in your life, I promise you, who would love to get a box of Omaha Steaks. I love getting one every time it arrives on my porch because I love the butcher's cut filet mignons. They're so tender and so flavorful. The amazing burgers, the jumbo franks, other easy-to-prepare meals that come with it. Omaha Steaks is just a gift from the heart. So I'm really excited every time I get it. The food is incredible quality, and whoever you give it to for a gift or just give it to yourself, you are going to love it. Go to omahasteaks.com and take advantage of 50% off site-wide. Plus, use the code Martini at checkout and get an additional $30 off your order. But hurry, this sale ends soon. Again, visit omahasteaks.com and save big with 50% off site-wide. Plus, use the promo code Martini at checkout to get that extra $30 off your order. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code Martini at checkout. Minimum order may be required. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. And sometimes just the simplest tweet can really, really get a reaction here. And it certainly did for me when I saw this over the weekend. Lucas Tomlinson, who works over at Fox News, simply tweeting out, U.S. forces attacked for the 100th time since October 17th, the latest reportedly in Syria. So many of these, of course, in Iraq and Syria. We've also heard about some of these Red Sea incidents. The Biden administration has ordered very tepid counterstrikes at ammunition depots here and there used by Iranian proxies. When people keep attacking your troops, you got to do a little bit more to deter them if they're not being deterred by what you did before. So I'm not sure what exactly the right response is here, but clearly the Iranians are not intimidated by this administration at all.
Yeah, and look, these are largely drone attacks, although I guess there's other types of projectiles. Some of them are fired at U.S. Navy vessels that have the ability to detect them incoming and shoot them down. But some of them are fired at commercial vessels. The USS Carney responded just earlier today, I guess, with a time difference, to a distress call from a commercial vessel saying it was attacked by multiple projectiles in the southern Red Sea. I saw one of the major shipping lines said we're not going through the Red Sea anymore. It just isn't safe. Houthis are claiming responsibility for the attack on the Swan Atlantic. That's the name of the merchant vessel, 9 a.m. Sana'a time. And you just kind of look at this. Nothing is, first of all, it makes a mockery of that administration. The warnings from Harris, the warnings from President Biden early at the beginning of this conflict. Don't do it. Don't you dare. Well, they dared. They have chosen to do this over and over again. And occasionally we've blown up a storehouse in Syria. Iranian proxies, really whatever the strikes we've been doing, clearly it's not having much of a deterrent effect. And, the sheer numbers add up higher and higher. Credit to Fox News. You look around, you can actually, I think this is another case of check the box journalism, where you can find articles on CNN marking how many attacks there have been. You can find articles from places like the AP and Politico and Reuters and a couple of other, larger, but you don't see, there certainly isn't a drumbeat, and it certainly isn't breaking news. It certainly is not the sort of thing they interrupt regular coverage for. So once again, we have this circumstance in which the Biden administration, U.S. forces are coming under fire regularly. So far, that's the sound of me knocking on wood, the casualties have not been that severe, but whenever you're under fire, I never want to say it's easy or it's not that big a deal. And then simultaneously, there are still, I believe the last count was 9 U.S. citizens being held by Hamas. And you and I have discussed in previous episodes about how the coverage of that is much less than you would have expected. And maybe you wouldn't, maybe we're past the era of a Nightline style program where you get reminded every night that there are still U.S. people who are held hostage. But the lack of interest in some of these stories seems really intriguing, really unusual, and very, very convenient for the Biden administration. If I said to you that U.S. troops could come under fire by hostile foreign forces 100 times in the span of 2-3 months, most people say, well, my God, that must be huge. Like the country's at war. That's huge. And yet I imagine the average American has only the vaguest idea that any of this is going on, in part because the Biden administration doesn't want to talk about it, and the media itself is less interested in it than you might otherwise think.
The Iranian regime is never going to like you, President Biden, Secretary of State Blinken, Vice President Harris, whoever else is dealing with this, Jake Sullivan. You can try to play footsie with them all you want. They hate you and want you dead. They call you the great Satan, not out it's a term of endearment. So the fact that Biden is downplaying is probably hand in hand with what you were saying, Jim, why the media downplays it. So if they were making a big deal out of it, then the media coverage would probably play along. And of course, it goes without saying that if a Republican president was in office with 100 attacks in pretty much exactly 2 months, we'd probably hear a lot more about it.
We play the game of, what if it was a Republican or something like that? The frame of hostile foreign forces attacking U.S. troops when it's a Republican president is that this inevitably ties back to some administration policy, that something we had done had provoked this hostility, and look at the mess this Republican president has gotten us into. With a Democratic president, we notice that there's no narrative of, oh, look what Biden did to deserve, but I don't think the U.S. does anything to provoke this or deserve this. I think this is the Houthis are, funded by Iran, and they see the U.S. as an enemy, and they're always going to see the U.S. as an enemy. And it's not a matter of if we were somehow more reasonable, they would not be attacking us. But it's just kind of this is just the core of how the media sees these things. It is everything that happens is a MacGuffin about the story of the Democratic president and how he's doing. And he has to triumph in the end because he's the Democrat.
All right, let's talk about another fantastic sponsor for today, and that is Provia. Are you scared of inheriting that hair loss or thinning look just because it happens to run in the family? We've got some good news for you. There's a real solution that delivers on its promise without the harsh side effects, unwanted chemicals, and you also don't need a prescription. It's called Provia. And right now, new customers save over 50%, plus get free shipping on Provia's introductory package at proviahair.com/martini.
Provia uses a safe, natural ingredient, Procapol, to effectively target the 3 main causes of premature hair thinning and loss. Provia supports healthy scalp circulation. It delivers nourishing nutrients and healthy hair follicle anchoring to your scalp. It's effective for men, women, any age, and it's safe on colored, treated, or styled hair.
Provia works guaranteed, or you get 100% of your money back. Don't wait. Order now and save an extra 10% off just in time for the holidays at proviahair.com/martini. That's PROVIA hair.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. And we've been talking about young people a number of different times this year, and it's usually out of concern when you see rates of depression and contemplating suicide, isolation, learning loss, obviously, from COVID and so forth. But there's a news story picked up by the New York Post late last week about a couple of different polls that ought to be pretty alarming here. Add going out to dinner to the lengthening list of things Gen Z simply can't or won't do like the rest of us. A surprising majority of young people reported suffering from menu anxiety while eating in a public setting. This is a survey done by the British restaurant chain Prezzo. They asked 2,000 people how relaxed they felt while eating out, trying to gauge how enjoyable the dining out experience is for people. About 86% of Gen Z adults, so aged 18 to 24, admitted they suffered from menu anxiety when dining in restaurants. Although overall it's 67%, so it's not just them in the UK. Some of these young adults, 34%, reported feeling so anxious they wind up asking other people at the table to speak to waiters on their behalf. They also say that they get very, very anxious if they can't find an online menu before going because they're extraordinarily concerned they might end up ordering something they don't like. Meanwhile, in a survey in the United States recently, also of 2,000 people, 41% of Gen Z and millennials aged 18 to 43 also say they have menu anxiety, compared with only 15% of Gen X and baby boomers. So this goes back to a while now. You've got millennials and Gen Zs. If you ever talk to them, they absolutely hate talking on the phone. And if you call them without telling them you're going to call, they get very, very anxious. I'm serious. You have to tip them off that you're about to call them, many of them. And now you've literally got people almost afraid to go to the restaurant because of the interaction, it seems, with the wait staff, or not sure what they're going to get. I don't want to chalk it up entirely to just staring at phones and other devices all day, but it feels like just being able to have a real conversation and dealing with life is becoming a struggle here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Greg. I was looking at my phone. I was listening. So, Greg, I'm sure our listeners are expecting us to make fun of these young people and snark about these, idiot millennials, idiot Gen Z, ha, ha, ha. Actually, I think I'm going to be very serious for a moment. I'm going to have kind of a confession. There's a reason I thought we should talk about this today. I, too, have menu anxiety, and I've suffered with it for many, many years. I will admit I have a slightly different version in that when I look at a menu, particularly at a good restaurant, I want to have like 4 or 5 of the appetizers and like 3 or 4 of the entrees. And I've learned that if you order that, 1, it gets really expensive, and 2, people look at you funny for eating that much at one time. Trust me, I'm capable of doing it. It's not good for me. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but okay, I can get the idea of you get into a restaurant, you look at the menu, and having indecision and having this question of, do I want that? Do I want that? How does this restaurant, particularly if you haven't, ordered the dish before, slightly less tongue-in-cheek. Actually, most restaurants we've been to before, I know what I like. I'll usually get the same thing over and over again, and I can decide within 30 seconds. Mrs. Garrity will need 20 minutes to select the drink. The appetizer is going to take another 10, 15 minutes. And then after that, she'll, I'll get whatever or something like that. No, I exaggerate slightly. But I can, so the joking thing here is to say that, oh my goodness, how can these people have this much difficulty ordering off a menu in a restaurant? The slightly more serious thing is that I think if you have this much pain, if it really causes you this much stress, I don't think you have menu anxiety. I think you have just flat out anxiety, and you probably should see some therapist. Maybe you need to be on medication, like something because in the end, if you order something and you don't like it, okay, life goes on. Next time, order something else. This is no one goes into a restaurant and automatically knows they're going to love every dish on the menu. Maybe they've heard the place is really good at barbecued ribs or something like that. Maybe, that there's certain stuff you probably don't want to order at a particular establishment. We've all heard the jokes about gas station sushi and things like that. But in the end, the stakes are so small that you really shouldn't be paralyzed with indecision, Mrs. Garrity. No, that just people should just kind of okay, in the end, if you order something and it's not or you think your partner or somebody else ordered the something better, okay, order that next time. You're going to be okay. And it's kind of this catastrophization. There's another term for it. I can't remember what it was, but it's there's something where basically you look at a potential decision or question or scenario, and your mind automatically goes to the absolute worst case scenario. And I'm kind of asking, what is the worst case scenario if you order something off a menu and it's not the thing you wanted? Trust me, the waiter is not going to yell at you for your selection. Not, we've all seen the jokes and sketches about the rude French waiters and all that stuff. By the way, when I was in France, everybody was fine. Why are you walking around with this fear that if you make the wrong decision, everything's going to turn terrible? Now, maybe it goes back to some trauma. Maybe there's I guess what I'm saying is that there's something going on there. And you really shouldn't feel this way. So if you are listening to this and you're getting irked at Jim and Greg for making fun of this because you feel this way, first of all, my first piece of advice would be close your eyes, point at something on the menu, take a shot, see what it's like. Maybe you'll find something you knew that you really enjoy. Maybe you won't. It's okay. Secondly, if you really do feel this all the time, go see a therapist, go talk to somebody, because it's not normal human behavior. There are things in this life worth stressing about. How am I going to pay the mortgage? How am I going to pay the rent? Are my kids doing okay? Are my parents doing okay? Like, there's all kinds of things in this world that are legitimate to worry about. What to order on the menu is not one of them.
And I think, in the era before smartphones, when you went out to dinner, you actually had to interact with the rest of your family. Remember those days? And then you would speak to the waiter, and it didn't seem so strange. You weren't just looking up from your screen and maybe telling them what you want if you hadn't deferred to somebody else at the table, depending on your reluctance to deal with a waiter because it's a person you don't know or something like that. But also, I think it's just generally true of this generation. They've grown up in an era where everyone tells them that the world's about to end, whether it's climate change or, if they're 18 years old, for the last 9, they've been told that Donald Trump's the worst thing that's ever hit the planet. And so if he is in power, then that's the worst thing that could ever happen. And just everything is awfulized to the worst.
Yeah, this is not an era that punishes you for panic, that punishes you for catastrophization. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Like in the end, particularly on social media, you get rewarded for it, and that's not the good kind of reinforcement, because that means no one else will tell you, no, you shouldn't feel this way, you shouldn't get that upset. You do get upset, and it incentivizes this kind of panic over what in the end are fairly minor things or things you don't have much control about. And I'd say, focus on what you can control in your life, and let either a higher power or fate take care of the rest. And you're probably going to be okay. You're probably going to be at least a calmer, happier person by focusing on what you can control in this life.
Yeah, erasing, or trying to, in some cases, trying to remove God from the public square is a big part of it too. And just being overwhelmed because people constantly tell you how horrible everything is. But anyway, on that note, go out, get some dinner. Don't worry about what to order, and just enjoy the experience. Jim, see you tomorrow.
You know what? If all else fails, get a burger. Yes. It's really hard to screw that up.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell some friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us also on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Monday, and join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.